Hi guys! Hi! I feel like I need to make my mic a little bit louder for today because we're doing an ASMR stream today. Ooh! Hi everyone! Hi. How have we been today? I have had quite a nice day, to be honest. I went out in the morning and then I had a nice nap when I got back because I was like, oh, that was too early. And then I did some streaming stuff, which is gonna be my streams for next week. A wink. Oh, I'm winking, guys, you just can't see. But yeah, so we'll be doing some reading today. As per usual, my reading stream won't be too long because it's gonna be the same length. Not same length. What? Oh yeah, because I like keeping the calm vibes of these streams, and I feel like if they're super duper long, then I don't know. I find they're not tiring or anything. I feel like as a viewer though, you wanna just like tune into a nice like short stream, you know? Like if you've got an ASMR, you wanna just pop in, listen to some chapters, pop out, you know? But yeah, so I will be reading chapter 16 of Rebecca. Hopefully we'll get in a little bit further than usual. Because I feel really bad because we've been reading this book for so long. This chapter is super long. Oh gosh. It's gonna be a doozy. Alright. Let's get right into it, okay? Okay. It was one Sunday, I remember, when we had an invasion of visitors during the afternoon, that the subject of the fancy dress ball was first brought up. Frank Crawley had come over for lunch, and we were all three of us looking forward to a peaceful afternoon under the chestnut tree, when we heard the fatal sound of a car rounding the sweep in the drive. It was too late to warn Firth. The car itself came upon us, standing on the terrace, with cushions and papers under our arms. We had to come forward and welcome the unexpected guests. As often happens in such cases, these were not to be the only visitors. Another car arrived about half an hour afterwards, followed by 3 local people who had walked from Kerrith, and we found ourselves with the peace stripped from our day. Entertaining group after group of dreary acquaintances, doing the regulation walk in the grounds, the tour of the rose garden, the stroll across the lawns, and the formal inspection of the Happy Valley. They stayed for tea, of course, and instead of the lazy nibbling of cucumber sandwiches under the chestnut tree, we had the paraphernalia of a stiff tea in the drawing room, which I always loathed. Firth, in his element, of course, directing Robert with a lift of his eyebrow, and myself rather hot and flustered with a monstrous silver teapot and kettle, as I never knew how to manage. I found it very difficult to gauge the exact moment when it became imperative to dilute the tea with the boiling water, and more difficult still to concentrate on the small talk that was going on at my side. Frank Crawley was invaluable at a moment like this. He took the cups from me and handed them to people, and when the answer seemed more than usually vague, owing to my concentration on the silver teapot, he quietly and unobtrusively put in his small wedge to the conversation, relieving me of responsibility. Maxim was always, at the other end of the room, showing a book to a bore, or pointing out a picture, playing the perfect host in his own inimitable way. And the business of tea was a side issue that did not matter to him. His own cup of tea grew cold, left on a side table behind some flowers, and I, seated behind my kettle, and Frank gallantly juggling with scones and angel cake, were left to minister to the common wants of the herd. It was Lady Croman, a tiresome, gushing woman who lived in Kerrith, who introduced the matter. There was one of those pauses in conversation that happen in every tea party, and I saw Frank's lip about to form the inevitable, an idiotic remark about an angel passing overhead, when Lady Croman, balancing a piece of cake on the edge of her saucer, looked up at Maxim, who happened to be beside her. "Oh, Mr. De Winter," she said. "There is something I've been wanting to ask you for ages. Now, tell me, is there any chance of you reviving the Manderley fancy dress ball?" She put her head on one side as she spoke, flashing her 2 prominent teeth in what she supposed was a smile. I lowered my head instantly and became very busy with the emptying of my own teacup, screening myself behind the cosy. It was a moment or two before Maxim replied, and when he did, his voice was a quiet, calm, and matter-of-fact. "I haven't thought about it," he said, "and I don't think anyone else has." "Oh, but I assure you we have all thought about it so much," continued Lady Croman. "It used to make the summer for all of us in this part of the world. You have no idea of the pleasure it used to give. Can't I persuade you to think about it again?" "Well, I don't know," said Maxim dryly. "It was all rather a business to organise. You'd better ask Frank Crawley. He'd have to do it." "Oh, Frank Crawley, do be on my side," she persisted, and 1 or 2 of the others joined in. "It would be a most popular move, you know. We all miss the Manderley gaiety." I heard Frank's quiet voice beside me. "I don't mind organising the ball if Maxim's no objection to giving it. It's up to him and Mrs. De Winter. It's nothing to do with me." Of course, I was bombarded at once. Lady Croman moved her chair so that the cosy no longer hid me from view. "Now, Mrs. De Winter, you get round your husband. You are the person he will listen to. He should give the ball in your honour as the bride." "Yes, of course," said somebody else, a man. "We missed the fun of the wedding, you know. It's a shame to deprive us of all the excitement. Hands up for the Manderley fancy dress ball. There, you see, De Winter? Carried unanimously." There was much laughter and clapping of hands. Maxim lit a cigarette, and his eyes met mine over the teapot. "What do you think about it?" he said. "I don't know," I said uncertainly. "I don't mind." "Of course she longs to have a ball in her honour," gushed Lady Croman. "What girl wouldn't? You'd look sweet, Mrs. De Winter, dressed as a little Dresden shepherdess, your hair tucked under a big 3-cornered hat." I thought of my clumsy hands and feet and the slope of my shoulders. A fine Dresden shepherdess I should make. What an idiot the woman was. I was not surprised when nobody agreed with her, and once more I was grateful to Frank for turning the conversation away from me. "As a matter of fact, Maxim, someone was talking about it the other day. I suppose we shall be having some sort of celebration for the bride, shall we, Mr. Crawley?" he said. "I wish Miss De Winter would give a ball again. It was rare fun for all of us. It was Tucker at the home farm. Oh, it was Tucker at the home farm, not the home farm," he added to Lady Croman. "Of course they do adore a show of any kind. I don't know. I told him. Miss De Winter hasn't said anything to me." "There you are," said Lady Croman triumphantly to the drawing-room in general. "What did I say? Your own people are asking for a ball. If you don't care for us, surely you care about them." Maxim still watched me doubtfully over the teapot. It occurred to me that perhaps he thought I could not face it, that, being shy, he knew only too well I should find myself unable to cope. I did not want him to think that. I did not want him to feel I should let him down. "I think it would be rather fun," I said. Maxim turned away, shrugging his shoulders. "That settled it, of course," he said. "All right, Frank, you will have to go ahead with the arrangements. Better get Mrs. Danvers to help you. She will remember the form." "That amazing Mrs. Danvers is still with you, then?" said Lady Croman. "Yes," said Maxim shortly. "I have some more cake for you, or have you finished? Then let's all go out to the garden." We wandered out on the terrace. everyone discussing the prospect of the ball and suitable dates, and then, greatly to my relief, the car parties decided it was time to take their departure, and the walkers went too, on being offered a lift. I went back into the drawing room and had another cup of tea, which I thought taken from me. That I thoroughly enjoyed now that the burden of entertaining had been taken from me. And Frank came too, and we crumbled up the remains of the scones and ate them, feeling like conspirators. Maxim had thrown sticks for Jasper on the lawn. I wondered if it was the same in every home, this feeling of exuberance when a visitor had gone. We did not say anything about the ball for a while, and then, when I had finished my cup of tea and wiped my sticky fingers on a handkerchief, I said to Frank, "Do you truthfully think about this fancy dress business?" Frank hesitated, half glancing out of the window at Maxim on the lawn. "I don't know," he said. Maxim did not seem to object, did he? I thought he took the suggestion very well. "It was difficult for him to do anything else," I said. "What a tiresome person Lady Croman is. Do you really believe all the people round here are talking and dreaming of nothing but a fancy dress ball at Manderley?" "I think they would all enjoy a show of some sort," said Frank. "We're very conventional down here, you know, about these things. I don't honestly think Lady Croman was exaggerating when she said something should be done in your honour. After all, Mrs. De Winter, you are a bride." How pompous and stupid it sounded. I wish Frank would not always be so terribly correct. "I'm not a bride," I said. "I did not even have a proper wedding. No white dress, or orange blossom, or trailing bridesmaids. I don't want a silly dance given in my honour." "It's a very fine sight, Manderley." Oh God, French. On fate. On fate. And fate, said Frank. "You'll enjoy it, you see. You won't have to do anything alarming. You just receive the guests, and there's nothing in that. Perhaps you'll give me a dance." "Dear Frank, I love this little solemn air of gallantry." "You shall have as many dances as you'd like," I said. "I shan't dance with anyone except you and Maxim." "Oh, that would not look right at all," said Frank, seriously. "People would be very offended. You must dance with the people who ask you." I turned away to hide my smile. It was a joy to me, the way he never knew when his leg had been pulled. "Do you think Lady Croman's suggestion about the Dresden shepherdess was a good one?" I said, shyly. He considered me solemnly, without the trace of a smile. "Yes, I do," he said. "I think you'd look very well indeed." I burst into laughter. "Oh, Frank, dear, I do love you," I said, and he turned rather pink. A little shocked, I think, at my impulsive words, and a little hurt, too, that I was laughing at him. "I don't see what I've said. That's funny," he said stiffly. Maxim came in at the window, Jasper dancing at his heels. "What's all the excitement about?" he said. "Frank is being so gallant," I said. "He thinks Lady Croman's idea of dressing up as a Dresden shepherdess is nothing to laugh at." "Lady Croman is a damn nuisance," said Maxim. "If she had to write out all the invitations and organise the affair, she would not be so enthusiastic. It's always been the same, though. The locals look upon Manderley as if it were a pavilion on the end of a pier, and expect us to put on a turn for their benefit. I suppose we shall have to ask the whole country." "I've got the records in the office," said Frank. "It won't really entail much work. Looking the stamps is the longest job." "We'll give that for you to do," said Maxim, smiling at me. "Oh, we'll do that in the office," he said. Mrs. De Winter need not bother her head about anything at all. I wondered what they would say if I suddenly announced my intention of ruining the whole affair. Laugh, I suppose, and then begin talking of something else. I was glad, of course, to be relieved of responsibility, but it rather added to my sense of humility to feel that I was not even capable of licking stamps. I thought of the writing desk in the morning room, the docketed pigeonholes, all marked in ink by that slanting, pointing hand. "What will you wear?" I said to Maxim. "I never dress up," said Maxim. "It's the one perquisite allowed for the host, isn't it, Frank?" "I can't really go as a Dresden shepherdess," I said. "What on earth shall I do? I'm not much good at dressing up." Put a ribbon round your hair and be Alice in Wonderland, said Maxim lightly. You look like it now with your finger in your mouth. Don't be so rude, I said. I know my hair is straight, but it isn't as straight as that. I'll tell you what. I'll give you and Frank the surprise of your lives, and you won't know me. As long as you don't black your face and pretend to be a monkey. Oh my god. I don't mind what you do, said Maxim, slow. All right, that's a bargain, I said. I'll keep my costume a secret to the last minute, and you won't know anything about it. Come on, Jasper, we don't care what they say, do we? I heard Maxim laughing as I went out into the garden, and he said something to Frank, which I did not catch. I wished he would not always treat me as a child, rather spoilt, rather irresponsible, someone to be petted from time to time, when the mood came upon him, but more often forgotten, more often patted on the shoulder and told to run away and play. Wish something would happen to make me look wiser, more mature. Was it always going to be like this? He away ahead of me, with his own moods that I did not share, his secret troubles that I did not know. Would we never be together, he a man, and I a woman, standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, with no gulf between us? I did not want to be a child. I want to be his wife, his mother. I wanted to be old. I stood on the terrace, biting my nails, looking down towards the sea, and as I stood there, I wondered for the 20th time that day whether it was by Maxim's orders that those rooms in the West Wing were kept unfurnished and untouched. I wondered if he went, as Mrs. Danvers did, and touched the brushes on the dressing table, opened the wardrobe doors, and put his hands amongst the clothes. Come on, Jasper, I shouted. Run! Run with me! Come on, can't you? And I tore across the grass, savagely, angrily, the bitter tears behind my eyes, with Jasper leaping at my heels and barking hysterically. The news soon spread about the fancy dress ball. My little maid, Clarice, her eyes shining with excitement, talked of nothing else. I gathered from her that the servants in general were delighted. Mr. Firth says it will be like old times, said Clarice, eagerly. I heard him saying to Alice in the passage this morning, What will you wear, madam? I don't know, Clarice. I can't think, I said. Mother said I was to be sure to tell her, said Clarice. She remembers the last ball they gave at Manderley, and she has never forgotten it. Will you be hiring a costume from London, do you think? I haven't made up my mind yet, Clarice, I said. But I'll tell you what. When I do decide, I shall tell you and nobody else. It will be a dead secret between us both. Oh, madam, how exciting, breathed Clarice. I don't know how I'm going to wait for the day. I was curious to know Mrs. Danvers' reaction to the news. Since that afternoon, I dreaded even the sound of her voice down the house telephone, and by using Robert as a mediator between us, I was spared from this last ordeal. I cannot forget the expression on her face when she left the library after that interview with Maxim. I thanked God she had not seen me crouching in the gallery, and I wondered too if she thought it was I who had told Maxim about Favel's visit to the house. If so, she would hate me more than ever. I shuddered now when I remembered the touch of her hand on my arm and that dreadful, soft, intimate pitch of her voice close to my ear. I did not want to remember her, not even on the house telephone. Wait, I skipped a line. I did not want to remember anything about that afternoon. That was why I did not speak to her, not even on the house telephone. The preparations went on for the ball. Everything seemed to be done down at the estate office. Maxim and Frank were down there every morning. As Frank had said, I did not have to bother my head about anything. I don't think I licked one I began to get in a panic about my costume. It seemed so feeble not to be able to think of anything, and I kept remembering all the people who would come from Kerrith and round, about the bishop's wife who had enjoyed herself so much the last time, Beatrice and Giles, that tiresome Lady Crowman, and many more people I did not know and who had never seen me. They would, every one of them, have some criticism to offer, some curiosity to know what sort of effort I should make. At last, in desperation, I remembered the books that Beatrice had given me for a wedding present, and I sat down in the library one morning, turning over the pages as a last hope, passing from illustration to illustration in a sort of frenzy. Nothing seemed suitable. They were all so elaborate and pretentious. Those gorgeous costumes of velvet and silk in the reproductions given of Rubens, Rembrandt, and others. I got a hold of a piece of paper and a pencil, and copied one or two of them, but they did not please me, and I threw the sketches into the waste-paper basket in disgust, thinking no more of them. In the evening, when I was changing for dinner, there was a knock on my bedroom door. I called, "Come in," thinking it was Clarice. The door opened, and it was not Clarice. It was Mrs. Danvers. She held a paper in her hand. "I hope you will forgive me for disturbing you," she said, "but I was not sure whether you meant to throw these drawings away. All the waste-paper baskets are always brought to me to check at the end of the day, in case of mislaying anything of value. Robert told me this was thrown into the library basket." I had turned quite cold all over at the sight of her, and at first I could not find my voice. She held out the paper for me to see. It was the rough drawing I had done during the morning. "No, Mrs. Danvers," I said, after a moment. "It doesn't matter, throwing that away. It was only a rough sketch. I don't want it." "Very good," she said. "I thought it better to inquire from you personally, to save any misunderstanding." "Yes," I said. "Yes, of course." I thought she would turn and go, but she went on, standing there by the door. "So you have not decided yet on what you will wear?" she said. There was a hint of derision in her voice, a trace of cold satisfaction. I suppose she had heard of my efforts through Clarice in some way. "No," I said. "No, I haven't decided." She continued watching me, her hand on the handle of the door. "I wonder you're going to copy one of these pictures in the gallery," she said. I pretended to file my nails. They were too short and too brittle, but the action gave me something to do, and I did not have to look at her. Yes, I might have to think about it," I said. I wondered privately why such an idea had never come to me before. It was an obvious and very good solution to my difficulty. I did not want her to know this, though. I went on filing my nails. "All the pictures in the gallery would make good costumes," said Mrs. Danvers, "especially that one of the young lady in white with the hat in her hand. I wonder Mr. Winter does not make it a period ball. Everyone dressed more or less the same to be in keeping. I never think it looks right to see a clown dancing with a lady in powder and patches." "Some people enjoy the variety," I said. "They think it makes it all the more amusing." "I don't like it myself," said Mrs. Danvers. Her voice was surprisingly normal and friendly, and I wondered why it was that she had taken the trouble to come up with my discarded sketch herself. Did she want to be friends with me at last? Or did she realize it had not been me at all who had told Maxim about Favell, and that this was her way of thanking me for my silence? "Has not Mr. De Winter suggested a costume for you?" she said. "No," I said, after a moment's hesitation. "No, I want to surprise him and Mr. Crawley. I don't want them to know anything about it." "It's not for me to make a decision, I know," she said. "But when you do decide, I should advise you to have your dress made in London. There is no one down there that can do that sort of thing. Well, Royce, in Bond Street, is a good place, I know." "I must remember that," I said. "Yes," she said, and then, as she opened the door, "I should study the pictures in the gallery, madam, if I were you, especially the one I mentioned, and you need not to think I will give you away. I won't say a word to anyone." "Thank you, Mrs. Danvers," I said. She shut the door very gently behind me. I went on with my dressing, puzzled at her attitude, so different from our last encounter, and wondering whether I had the unpleasant Favell to thank for it. Rebecca's cousin. Why should Maxim dislike Rebecca's cousin? Why had he forbidden him to come to Manderley? Beatrice had called him a bounder, and had not said much about him, and the more I considered him, the more I agreed with her. Those hot blue eyes, that loose mouth, and the careless familiar laugh. Some people consider him attractive, girls in sweet shops giggling behind the counter, and girls who gave won programs in a cinema. I knew how he would look at them, smiling and half whistling a tune under his breath. The sort of look and the type of whistle that would make one feel uncomfortable. I wondered how well he knew Manderley. He seemed quite at home, and Jasper certainly recognised him. But these two facts did not fit in with Maxim's words to Mrs. Danvers, and I could not connect him with my idea of Rebecca. Rebecca, with her beauty, her charm, her breeding. Why did she have a cousin like Jack Favell? It was wrong, out of proportion. I decided he must be a skeleton in the family cupboard, and Rebecca, with her generosity, had taken pity on him from time to time, and invited him to Manderley. Perhaps, when Maxim was from home, knowing his dislike, there had been some arguments about it probably, Rebecca defending him, and ever after. This, perhaps, a slight awkwardness whenever his name was mentioned. As I sat down to dinner in the dining room, in my accustomed place, with Maxim at the head of the table, I pictured Rebecca sitting in where I sat now, picking up her fork for the fish, and then the telephone ringing, and Firth coming into the room and saying, "Mr. Favell on the phone, madam, wishing to speak to you." And Rebecca would get up from her chair with a quick glance at Maxim, who would not say anything. He would go on eating his fish, and when she came back, having finished her conversation and sat down in her place again, Rebecca would begin talking about something different, in a gay, careless way, to cover up the little cloud between them. At first, Maxim would be glum, answering in monosyllables, but little by little she would win his humour back again, telling him some story of her day about someone she had seen in Kerrith, and when they had finished the next course, he would be laughing again, looking at her and smiling, putting out his hand to her across the table. "What the devil are you thinking about?" said Maxim. I started, the colour flooding from my face, for in that brief moment, 60 seconds in time perhaps, I had so identified myself with Rebecca that my own dull self did not exist, had never come to Manderley. I had gone back in thought and in person to the days that were gone. "Do you know you were going through the most extraordinary antics instead of eating your fish?" said Maxim. "First you listened as though you heard the telephone, and then your lips moved, and you threw half a glance at me, and you shook your head and smiled and shrugged your shoulders, all in about a second. Are you practising your appearance for the fancy dress ball?" He looked across at me, laughing, and I wondered what he would say if he really knew my thoughts, my heart, and my mind, and that for 1 second he had been the Maxim of another year, and that I had been Rebecca. "You look like a little criminal," he said. "What is it?" "Nothing," I say quickly. "I wasn't doing anything." "Tell me what you were thinking." "Why should I? You never tell me what you're thinking about." "I don't think you ever asked me." "Have you?" "Yes, I did once. I don't remember. We were in the library. Very probably. What did I do?" "You told me you were wondering who had been chosen to play for Surrey against Middlesex." Maxim laughed again. "What a disappointment to you. What did you hope I was thinking?" "Something very different." "What sort of thing?" "Oh, I don't know." "No, I don't suppose you do. If I told you I was thinking about Surrey and Middlesex, I was thinking about Surrey and Middlesex. Men are simpler than you imagine, my sweet child. But what goes on in the twisted, tortuous minds of women would baffle anyone. Do you know, it did not look a bit like yourself just now. You had quite a different expression on your face." "I did? What sort of expression?" "I don't know what I can explain. You looked older suddenly, deceitful. It was rather unpleasant." "I did not mean to." "No, I don't suppose you did." I drank some water, watching him over the rim of my glass. "Don't you want me to look older?" I said. "No." "Why not?" "Because it would not suit you." "One day I shall. It can't be helped. I shall have grey hair and lines and things." "I don't mind that." "What do you mind then?" "I don't want you to look like you did just now. You had a twist to your mouth and a flash of knowledge in your eyes. Not the right sort of knowledge." I felt very curious, rather excited. What do you mean, Maxim? What isn't the right sort of knowledge? He did not answer for a moment. Firth had come back into the room and was changing the plates. Maxim waited until Firth had gone behind the screen and through the service door before speaking again. When I first met you, first you had a certain expression on your face, he said slowly, and you still have it. And I'm not going to define it. I don't know how to. But it was one of the reasons why I married you. A moment ago, when you were going through that curious little performance, the expression had gone. Something else had taken its place. What sort of thing? Explain it to me, Maxim, I said eagerly. He considered me for a moment, his eyebrows raised, not raised, whistling softly. Listen, my sweet, when you were a little girl, were you ever forbidden to read certain books, and did your father put those books under lock and key? Yes, I said. Well then, a husband is not so very different from a father after all. There is a certain type of knowledge I prefer you not to have. It's better kept under lock and key, so that's that. And now eat up your peaches and don't ask me any more questions, or I shall put you in the corner. I wish you would not treat me as if I was 6, I said. How do you want to be treated? Like other men treat their wives. Knock you about, you mean? Don't be absurd. Then must you make a joke out of everything? I'm not joking. I'm very serious. No, you're not. I can tell by your eyes. You're playing with me all the time, just as if I was a silly little girl. Alice in Wonderland. That was a good idea of mine. Have you bought your sash and your hair ribbon yet? I warn you, you'll get the surprise of your life when you do see me in the fancy dress. I'm sure I shall. Get on with your peach and don't talk with your mouth full. I've got a lot of letters to write after dinner. He did not wait for me to finish. He got up and strolled about the room, and asked Firth to bring the coffee in the library. I sat still, sullenly, being as slow as I could, hoping to keep things back and irritate him. But Firth took no notice of me and my peach. He brought the coffee at once, and Maxim went off to the library by himself. When I had finished, I went upstairs to the minstrel's gallery to have a look at the pictures. I knew them well, of course, by now, but I had never studied them with a view to reproducing one of them as a fancy dress. Mrs. Danvers was right, of course. What an idiot I had been not to think of it before. I always loved the girl in white, with a hat in her hand. It was a Rayburn, and the portrait was of Caroline de Winter, a sister of Maxim's, great-great-grandmother. She married a great big politician, and was a famous London beauty for many years. But this portrait was painted before that, when she was still unmarried. The white dress should be easy to copy. Those puffy sleeves, the flounce, and the little bodice. The hat might be rather difficult. And I should have to wear a wig. My straight hair would never curl in that way. Perhaps the Rose place in London that Mrs. Danvers had told me about would do the whole thing. I would send them a sketch of the portrait and tell them to copy it faithfully, sending my measurements. What a relief it was to have decided at last, quite a weight off my mind. I began almost to look forward to the ball, but perhaps I should enjoy it after all, almost as much as little Clarice. I wrote to the shop in the morning, enclosing a sketch of the portrait, and I had a very favourable reply, full of honour at my esteemed order, saying the work could be put in hand right away, and that they would manage the wig as well. Clarice could hardly contain her excitement, and I, too, began to get party fever as the great day approached. Giles and Beatrice were coming for the night, but nobody else, thank heaven. Although a lot of people were expected to dinner first, I had imagined we should have to hold a large house party for the occasion, but Maxim decided against it. Having the dance alone is quite enough effort, he said, and I wondered whether he did it for my sake alone, or whether a large crowd of people really bored him as he said. I had heard so much of the Manderley parties in the old days, with people sleeping in bathrooms and on sofas because of the squash, and here we were, alone in the vast house, with only Beatrice and Giles to count as guests. The house began to wear a new expectant air. Men came to lay a floor for dancing in the great hall, and in the drawing room some of the furniture was moved so that the long buffet tables could be placed against the wall. Lights were put on the terrace, and in the rose garden too. Wherever one walked, there would be some sign of preparation for the ball. Workmen from the estate were everywhere, and Frank came to lunch nearby every day. Oh, nearly every day. The servants talked of nothing else, and Firth stalked about as though the whole of the evening would depend on him alone. Robert, rather lost in his head, and kept forgetting things. Napkins at lunch and handling vegetables. He wore a harassed expression, like someone who had got to catch a train. The dogs were miserable. Jasper trailed about the hall with his tail between his legs, and nipped every workman in sight. He used to stand on the terrace, barking idiotically, and then dash madly to one corner of the lawn and eat grass in a sort of frenzy. Mrs. Danvers never obtruded herself, but I was aware of her continually. It was her voice I heard in the drawing room when they came to put the tables. It was she who gave directions for the laying of the floor in the hall. Whenever I came upon the scene, she had always just disappeared. I would catch a glimpse of her skirt brushing the floor, or hear the sound of her footsteps on the stairs. I was a lay figure, no use to man or beast. I used to stand about doing nothing except get in the way. "Excuse me, madam," I would hear a man say just behind me, and he would pass with a smile of apology, carrying 2 chairs on his back, his face dripping with perspiration. "I'm awfully sorry," I would say, getting quickly to one side, and then cover to my idleness. "Can I help you? What about putting those chairs in the library?" The man would look bewildered. "Mrs. Danvers' orders, madam, was that they were to take this." The great day dawned misty and overcast, but the glass was high, and we had no fears. The mist was a good sign. It cleared about 11, as Maxim had foretold, and we had a glorious still summer's day, without a cloud and a blue sky. All the morning the gardeners were bringing flowers into the house, the last of the white lilac, the great lupins and delphiniums, 5-foot-high roses in hundreds, and every sort of lily. Mrs. Danvers showed herself at last, quietly, calmly. She told the gardeners where to put the flowers, and she herself arranged them, stacking the vases with quick, deft fingers. I watched her in fascination, the way she did a vase after vase, carrying them herself through the flower room to the drawing room, and the various corners of the house, massing them in just the right number and profusion, putting colour where colour was needed, leaving the walls bare where severity paid. Maxim and I had lunch with Frank in his bachelor establishment next door to the office to be out of the way. We were all three in, we were all, yes, it just, sometimes old language, sometimes when I read old English I'm like, huh? We were all 3 in the rather hearty, cheerful humour of people after a funeral. We made pointless jokes about nothing at all, our minds eternally on the thought of the next hours. I felt very much the same as I did in the morning. I was married, the same stifled feeling that I had gone too far, now to turn back. The evening had got to be endured, thank heaven. Messrs. Bose had sent my dress in time. It looked perfect in its folds of tissue paper, and the wig was a triumph. I had tried it on after breakfast, and was amazed at the transformation. I looked quite attractive, quite different altogether. Not me at all, someone much more interesting, more vivid and alive. Maxim and Frank kept asking me about my costume. "You won't know me," I told them. "You will both get the shock of your lives." "You're not going to dress up as a clown, are you?" said Max gloomily. "No frightful attempt to be funny." "No, nothing like that," I said, full of importance. "I wish you had kept to Alice in Wonderland," he said. "Or Joan of Arc with your hair against a pale blue satin crinoline, or whatever the dress was." Poor Giles did not cope that year. He came as a cook, sat about the bar all night, looking perfectly miserable. I think he felt Bea had let him down. "No, it wasn't that," said Frank. "He'd lost his front teeth trying out a new mare, don't you remember? And he was so shy about it he wouldn't open his mouth." "Oh, was that it? Poor Giles. He generally enjoys dressing up." Beatrice says he loves playing charades," I said. "She told me they always have charades at Christmas." "I know," said Maxim. "That's why I've never spent Christmas with her. Have some more asparagus, Mrs. De Winter, and another potato?" "No, not really, Frank. I'm not hungry. Thank you." "Nerves," said Maxim, shaking his head. "Never mind. This time tomorrow it will all be over. I sincerely hope so, said Frank seriously. I was going to give orders that all cars should stand by for 5 a.m. I began to laugh weakly. The tears come into my eyes. Oh dear, I said. Let's send wires to everybody not to come. Come on, be brave and face it, said Maxim. We need not give another one for years, Frank. I have an uneasy feeling we ought to be going up to the house. What do you think? Frank agreed, and I followed them unwillingly, reluctant to leave the cramped, rather uncomfortable little dining room that was so typical of Frank's bachelor establishment, and which seemed to me today the embodiment of peace and quietude. When we came to the house, we found that the band had arrived, and was standing about in the hall, rather pink in the face, and self-conscious, while Firth, more important than ever, offered refreshments. The band were to be our guests for the night, and after all, we had welcomed them and exchanged a few slightly obvious jokes proper to the occasion. The band were borne off to their quarters to be followed by a tour of the grounds. I might just sit up really quickly. Oh, my back hurts so badly. I need a back brace or something. The afternoon dragged, the last hour before a journey, when one is packed and keyed to departure, and I wandered from room to room, almost as lost as Jasper, who trailed reproachfully at my heels. There was nothing I could do to help, and it would have been wiser on my part to have kept clear of the house altogether, and taken the dog and myself for a long walk. By the time I decided upon it, it was too late. Maxim and Frank were demanding tea, and when tea was over, Beatrice and Giles arrived there, and the evening had come upon us, all too soon. "Oh, this is like old times," said Beatrice, kissing Maxim and looking about her. "Congratulations, you two, for remembering every detail. The flowers are exquisite," she added, turning to me. "Did you do them?" "No," I said, rather ashamed. "Mrs. Danvers was responsible for everything." "Oh, well, after all..." Beatrice did not finish her sentence. She accepted a light for a cigarette from Frank, and once it was lit, she appeared to have forgotten what she was going to say. "Have you got Mitchell to do the catering as usual?" asked Giles. "Yes," said Maxim. "I don't think anything has been altered, has it, Frank? We had all the records down in the office. Nothing has been forgotten, and I don't think we have left anyone out." "What a relief to find only ourselves," said Beatrice. "I remember once arriving about this time, and there were about 25 people in the place already, all going to stop the night." "What's everyone going to wear? I suppose Maxim as always refuses to play." "As always," said Maxim. "Such a mistake, I think. The whole thing would go with much more swing if you did." "Have you ever known a ball at Manderley not to go with a swing?" "No, my dear boy. The organisation is too good, but I do think the host ought to give the lead himself." "I think that's quite enough if the hostess makes the effort," said Maxim. "Why should I make myself hot and uncomfortable and a damn fool into the bargain?" "Oh, but that's absurd. There's no need to look a fool. With your appearance, my dear Maxim, you get away with any costume. You don't have to worry about your figure like poor Giles." "What's Giles going to wear for tonight?" I asked. Or is it a dead secret?" "No, rather not," beamed Giles. "As a matter of fact, it's a pretty good effort. I've got our local tailor to bring it up. I'm coming as an Arabian sheik. Oh, God." I love old books. "Good God," said Maxim. "It's not at all bad," said Beatrice warmly. "He stains his face, of course, and leaves off his glasses." Oh, God. "The headdress is authentic. We borrowed it off a friend who used to live in the East, and the rest the tailor copied from some paper. Giles looks very well in it." "What are you going to be, Mrs. Lacey?" said Frank. "Oh, I'm afraid I haven't coped much," said Beatrice. "I've got some sort of decent get-up to go with Giles, but I don't pretend it's genuine. Strings of beads, you know, and a veil over my face." "It sounds very nice," I said politely. "Oh, it's not bad. Comfortable to wear, that's one blessing. I shall take off the veil if I get too hot. What are you wearing?" "Don't ask her," said Maxim. "She won't tell any of us. There has never been such a secret. I believe she even wrote to London for it." "My dear," said Beatrice, rather impressed. "Don't say you have got a bust and will put us all to shame. Mine is only homemade, you know." "Don't worry," I said, laughing. It's quite simple, really, but Maxim would tease me, and I've promised to give him the surprise of his life." "Quite right, too," said Giles. "Maxim is too superior altogether. The fact is, he's jealous, wishes he was dressing up like the rest of us. He doesn't like to say so." "Heaven forbid," said Maxim. "What are you doing, Frawley?" asked Giles. Frank looked rather apologetic. "I've been so busy. I'm afraid I've left things to the last moment. I hunted up an old pair of trousers last night and a striped football jersey, and thought of putting a patch over one eye and coming as a pirate." "Why on earth didn't you write to us and borrow a costume?" said Beatrice. "There's one of a Dutchman that Roger had last winter in Switzerland. It would have suited you excellently." "I refuse to allow my agent to walk about as a Dutchman," said Maxim. "He'd never get rents out of anybody again. Let him stick to his pirate. It might frighten some of them." "Anything less like a pirate," murmured Beatrice in my ear. I pretended not to hear. Poor Frank. She was always rather down on him. How long will it take me to paint my face?" asked Giles. 2 hours at least," said Beatrice. "I should be thinking about it if I were you. How many shall we be at dinner?" 16, said Maxim, counting ourselves. "No strangers. You know them all." "I'm beginning to get dress fever already," said Beatrice. What fun it all is. I'm so glad you decided to do this again, Maxim." "You've got to thank her for it," said Maxim, nodding at me. "Oh, it's not true," I said. It was all the fault of Lady Cromer." "Nonsense," said Maxim, smiling at me. "You know you're as excited as a child at its first party." "I'm not." "I'm longing to see your dress," said Beatrice. "There's nothing out of the way. Really, it's not," I insisted. "Mrs. De Winter says we shan't know her," said Frank. Everybody looked at me and smiled. I felt pleased and flushed and rather happy. People were being nice. They were all so friendly. It was suddenly fun. The thought of the dance and that I was to be the hostess. The dance was being given for me, in my honour, because I was the bride. I sat on the table in the library, swinging my legs, while the rest of them stood around, and I had a longing to go upstairs and put on my dress, try the wig in front of the looking-glass, turn this way and that before the long mirror on the wall. It was new, the sudden unexpected sensation of being important, of having Giles, Beatrice and Frank and Maxim all looking at me and talking about my dress, all wondering what I was going to wear. I thought of the soft white dress and its folds of tissue paper, and how it would hide my flat, dull figure, my rather sloping shoulders. I thought of my own lank hair covered by the sleek and gleaming curls. "What's the time?" I said, carelessly, yawning a little, pretending I did not care. "I wonder if we ought to think about going upstairs." As we crossed the great hall on the way to our rooms, I realised for the first time how the house lent itself to the occasion, and how beautiful the rooms were looking. Even the drawing-room, formal and cold to my consideration when we were alone, was a blaze of colour now. Flowers in every corner, red roses in silver bowls on the white cloth of the supper table. The long windows opened to the terrace, where as soon as it was dusk, the fairy lights would shine. The band had stacked their instruments ready for the minstrel's gallery above the hall, and the hall itself wore a strange, waiting air. There was a warmth about it I had never known before, due to the night itself, so still and clear, to the flowers beneath the pictures, to our own laughter as we hovered on the wide stone stairs. The old austerity had gone. Manderley had come alive in fashion I would not have believed possible. It was not the still, quiet Manderley I knew. There was a certain significance about it now that there had not been before. A reckless air, rather triumphant, rather pleasing. It was as if the house remembered other days, long, long ago, when the hall was a banqueting hall, indeed, with weapons and tapestry hanging upon the walls, and men sat in a long narrow table in the centre, laughing loudly, louder than we laugh now, calling for wine, for song, throwing great pieces of meat upon the flags to the slumbering dogs. Later, in other years, it would still be gay, but with a certain grace and dignity, and Caroline de Winter, whom I should present tonight, would walk down the wide stone stairs in her white dress to dance the minuet. I wished we could sweep away the years and see her. I wish we did not have to decorate the house with our modern jig tunes, so out of place and so unromantic. They would not suit Mandalay. I found myself in a sudden agreement with Mrs. Danvers. We should have made it a period ball, not the hodgepodge of humanity it was bound to be, with Giles, poor fellow, well-meaning and hearty in his guise of Arabian chic. I found Clarice waiting for me in my bedroom, her round face scarlet of excitement. We giggled at one another like schoolgirls, and I bade her lock my door. There was much sound of tissue paper, rustling and mysterious. We spoke to one another softly like conspirators, and we walked on tiptoe. I felt like a child again on the eve of Christmas, this padding to and fro in my room with bare feet, the little furtive bursts of laughter, the stifled exclamations, reminding me of hanging up my stocking long ago. Maxim was safe in his dressing room, and the way through was barred against him. Clarice alone was my ally and favoured friend. The dress fitted perfectly. I stood still, hardly able to restrain my impatience while Clarice hooked me up with fumbling fingers. "It's handsome, madam," she kept saying, leaning back on her heels to look at me. "It's a dress fit for the Queen of England." "What about under the left shoulder there?" I said anxiously. "A strap of mine. Is it going to show?" "No, madam, nothing shows." "How is it? How do I look?" I did not wait for her answer. I twisted and turned in front of the mirror. I frowned. I smiled. I felt different already, no longer hampered by my appearance. My own dull personality was submerged at last. "Give me the wig," I said excitedly. "Careful, don't crush it. The curls mustn't be flat. They are supposed to stand out from the face." Clarice stood behind my shoulder. I saw her round face beyond mine in the reflection of the looking-glass, her eyes shining, her mouth a little open. I brushed my own hair sleek behind my ears. I took hold of the soft gleaming curls with trembling fingers, laughing under my breath, looking up at Clarice. "Oh, Clarice," I said, what will Miss De Winter say?" I covered my own mousy hair with the curled wig, trying to hide my triumph, trying to hide my smile. Somebody came and hammered on the door. "Who's there?" I called in a panic. "You can't come in." "It's me, my dear. Don't alarm yourself," said Beatrice. "How far have you got? I want to look at you." No, I said. "You can't come in. I'm not ready." The flustered Clara stood beside me, her hand full of hairpins, while I took them from her one by one, controlling the curls that had become fluffed in the box. "I'll come down when I'm ready," I called. "Come on down, all of you. Don't wait for me. Tell Maxim he can't come in." "Maxim's down," she said. "He came along to us. He said he hammered on your bedroom door and you never answered." "Don't be too long, my dear. We are all so intrigued. Are you sure you don't want any help?" "No," I shouted impatiently, losing my head. "Go away, come on down." Why did she have to come and bother just at this time? It fussed me. I did not know what I was doing. She giggled excitedly, rather embarrassed, flushed, though very pleased. I paraded up and down in front of my glass, watching my reflection. "Unlock the door," I said. "I'm going down. Run ahead and see if they are there." She obeyed me, still giggling, and I lifted the skirts off the ground and followed her along the corridor. She looked back at me and beckoned. "They've gone down," she whispered. Mrs. De Winter and Major and Mrs. Lacey and Mr. Crawley have just come. They are all standing in the hall." I peered through the archway at the head of the big staircase and looked down on the hall below. Yes, there they were, Giles in his white Arab dress, laughing loudly, showing the knife at his side. Beatrice, waved in an extraordinary green garment, and hung about the neck with trailing beads. Poor Frank, self-conscious and slightly foolish in his striped jersey and sea boots. Maxim, the only normal one of the party, in his evening clothes. "I don't know what she's doing," he said. "She's been up in her bedroom for hours. What is the time, Frank? The dinner crowd will be upon us before we know where we are." The band were changed, and in the gallery already. One of the men was tuning his fiddle. He played a scale slowly, and then plucked the string. The light shone on the picture of Caroline de Winter. Yes, the dress had been copied exactly from my sketch of the portrait. The puff sleeve, the sash, and the ribbon, the wide floppy hat that I held in my hand, and my curls were her curls. They stood out from my face, as hers did in the picture. I don't think I have ever felt so excited before, so happy and so proud. I waved my hand at the man with the fiddle, and then put my finger to my lips for silence. He smiled and bowed. He came across the gallery to the archway, where I stood. "Make the drummer announce me," I whispered. "Make him beat the drum, you know how they do, and then call out Miss Caroline de Winter. I want to surprise him below." He nodded his head. He understood. My heart fluttered absurdly, and my cheeks were burning. What fun it was! What mad, ridiculous, childish fun! I smiled at Clara, still crouching in the corridor. I picked up my skirt in my hands. Then the sound of the drum echoed in the great hall, startling me for a moment. Who had waited for it? Who knew that it would come? I saw them look up, surprised and bewildered, from the hall below. "Miss Caroline de Winter," announced the drummer. I came forward to the head of the stairs and stood there, smiling, my hat in my hand like the girl in the picture. I waited for the clapping and laughter that would follow as I walked slowly down the stairs. Nobody clapped. Nobody moved. They all stared at me like dumb things. Beatrice uttered a little cry and put her hand to her mouth. I went on, smiling. I put one hand to the banister. "How do you do, Mrs. De Winter?" I said. Maxim had not moved. He stared up at me, his glass in his hand. There was no colour in his face. It was ashen white. ASMR. "Hi, Marco, welcome to the stream. Hi, hi, hi." I saw Frank go to him as though he would speak, but Maxim shook him off. I hesitated, one foot already on the stairs. Something was wrong. They had not understood. Why was Maxim looking like that? Why did they all stand like dummies, like people in a trance? Then Maxim moved forward to the stairs, his eyes never leaving my face. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he asked. His eyes blazed in anger. His face was still ashen white. I could not move. I went on standing there, my hand on the banister. "It's the picture," I said, terrified at his eyes, at his voice. "It's the picture, the one in the gallery." There was a long silence. We went on staring at each other. Nobody moved in the hall. I swallowed. My hand moved to my throat. "What is this?" I said. "What have I done?" Look at those crater walls and tell me they don't look like curtains. Hi, Echo, welcome to stream. I don't think they look like, I can kind of see what you mean, but I feel like they look more like a rock to me, but also I know that they're a rock, so. If only they would not stare at me like that with their dull, blank faces. If only somebody would say something. When Maxim spoke again, I did not recognize his voice. It was still quiet. It was still and quiet. Icy cold. Not a voice I knew. "Go and change," he said. "It does not matter what you put on. Go find an ordinary evening frock. Anything will do. Go now before anybody comes." I did not speak. I went on staring at him. His eyes were the only living things in the white mask of his face. "What are you standing there for?" he said, his voice harsh and queer. "Didn't you hear what I said?" I turned and ran blindly through the archway to the corridors beyond. I caught a glimpse of the astonished face of the drummer who had announced me. I brushed past him, stumbling, not looking where I went. Tears blinded my eyes. I did not know what was happening. Clarice was gone. The corridor was deserted. I looked about me, stunned and stupid like a haunted thing. Then I saw that the door leading to the west wing was open wide, and that someone was standing there. It was Mrs. Danvers. I shall never forget the expression on her face. Loathsome, triumphant, the face of an exulting devil. She stood there, smiling at me. And then I ran from her, down the long narrow passage to my own room, tripping, stumbling over the flounces of my dress. Oh, okay. That's the end of chapter 16. That was a doozy. Oh, congrats on 55 subs. Yeah, thank you. I honestly, I just, it's been such a great beginning of the year so far. Like, I've been enjoying all the content I've been putting out, and I think you guys have as well, which has been great. I think it's been so good. Like, oh, I've had so much fun so far, and like the SMP as well. It's just, oh, it's been great. It's been great. Did you get cold in the crater in an open field? Honestly, I came during the summer. Like, I first landed on Earth in the summer, so it wasn't too bad, but oh, now it's been hard. The last couple of months have really been hard. Yeah, but it's okay. I've got some blankets and stuff. We're good. I got my little bean bag to sleep on over there, so we're good. We good. Yeah, it was a very intense chapter. I feel really bad for her because she just wanted to wear a nice little dress for the ball, but I think Mrs. Danvers lied to her about something. But I think we'll find out about that in a future ASMR stream. So, yeah. Maybe get a roof on the crater. Yeah, I think what I should do is that I should, you know those cars where the roof comes on and off? I should get one of those for the crater. Especially because it rains here in the UK so much, like, it's tough. Basically, whenever it rains, I just have to, like, dash around and just, like, throw, like, stuff, like tarps over everything I own just so it doesn't get, like, destroyed by the rain. It's a hard life being me. You know what would be a fun reading stream? Wait, SCP documents. Honestly, yeah. I feel like I'd have to do it in like a really like American way. Be like, number do. Yeah, convertible. That's what I was thinking of. Convertible crater. Exactly. They should make that. You know, why doesn't that exist already? Maybe it's because I'm the only one who lives in a crater. That's probably the reason. I need to have a drink. Oh my gosh, that was such a long chapter. Oh. I don't know if you could tell, but at some points in that chapter, I really needed a drink. Because there were some points where I was like, but I didn't want to interrupt the chapter, so I did not drink. So I just had a nice little goop of some water. But yeah, the next chapter is shorter, thank goodness, but I don't think I'll read it today, just because that chapter was so long, and I think it covered a really interesting part. I think from the looks of it, the next chapter is going to be more about the rest of the ball, it looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's the rest of the ball. So, I mean, I might be able to do the rest of it. Oh, anyway, so Kyoka, I'm in the partnership. Yay! Congrats! I think it's about time I request a free Minecraft server. That's great! Oh my god, that's gonna be so exciting! Yay! Oh, enjoy it. Let me know what you do, like, on your first server. How much longer are you gonna stream for? I might read this last chapter just because it seems to be the rest of the ball, and I think it'd be nice just to have this, dream be about the ball. So, I was gonna end, but I think what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna continue. Yeah. Oh my god. There we go, I fixed it. It's okay, I didn't get too far into the chapter, but it's back. Okay, let me start chapter 17 again. Clarice was waiting for me in my bedroom. She looked pale and scared. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears. I did not say anything. I began tearing at the hooks of my dress, ripping the stuff. I could not manage them properly, and Clarice came to help me, still crying noisily. It's all right, Clarice. It's not your fault, I said, and she shook her head, the tears still running down her cheeks. Your lovely dress, madam, she said. It's your lovely white dress. So what are you going to do with your microserver? I think it'd be fun if we all just had a little, survival world, Nothing too crazy, just something where we can all, play Minecraft together if we want to. Just for fun. Yeah. It doesn't matter, I said. Can't you find the hook? There it is at the back, and another one somewhere, just below. She fumbled with the hooks, her hands trembling, making worse trouble with it than I did myself, and all the time catching her breath. What will you wear instead, madam? She said. I don't know, I said. I don't know. She had managed to unfasten the hooks, and I struggled out of the dress. I think I'd rather like to be alone, Clarice, I said. Would you be a dear and leave me? Don't worry. I shall manage all right. Forget what's happened. I want you to enjoy the party. Can't I press out the dress for you, madam? She said, looking up at me with swollen, streaming eyes. It won't take me a moment. No, I said. Don't bother. I'd rather you went and... Clarice? Yes, madam? Don't say anything about what just happened. No, madam. She burst into another torrent of weeping. Don't let the others see you like that, I said. Go to your bedroom and do something to your face. There's nothing to cry about. Nothing at all. Somebody knocked on the door. Clarice threw me a quick, frightened glance. I'm going to request it. Okay. That was so nice of you there, thank you. Who is it? I said. The door opened and Beatrice came into the room. She came to me at once, a strange, rather ludicrous figure in her Eastern drapery, the bangles jangling on her wrists. My dear, she said, my dear, and held out her hands to me. Clarice slipped out of the room. I felt suddenly tired and unable to cope. I went and sat down on the bed. I put my hand up to my head and took off the curled wig. Beatrice stood, watching me. Are you all right? She said. You look very white. It's the light, I said. It never gives one any colour. Sit down for a few minutes and you'll be all right, she said. Wait, I'll get a glass of water. She went to the bathroom, her bangles jangling with her every movement, and then she came back, the glass of water in her hands. I drank some to please her, not wanting it a bit. It tasted warm from the tap. She did not let it run. Of course I knew at once it was just a terrible mistake, she said. You could not possibly have known. Why should you? Known what? I said. Why, the dress, you poor dear. The picture you copied of the girl in the gallery. It was what Rebecca did at the last fancy dress ball at Manderley. Identical. The same picture. The same dress. We stood there on the stairs, and for one ghastly moment I thought... She did not go on with her sentence. She patted me on her shoulder. You poor child. How wretchedly unfortunate. How were you to know? I ought to have known, I said, stupidly, staring at her too, stunned to understand. I ought to have known. Nonsense. How could you know? It was not the sort of thing that could possibly enter any of our heads. Only it was such a shock, you see. None of us expected it, and Maxim... Yes, Maxim, I said. He thinks, you see, it was deliberate on your part. You had some bet that you would startle him, didn't you? Some foolish joke. And of course he doesn't understand. It was such a frightful shock for him. I told him at once you could not have done such a thing, and it was a sheer appalling luck that you had chosen that particular picture. Done, just gotta wait for the manager to reply. Yay! I know I already said this, but thank you. It's really kind of you to do that for me, thank you. I ought to have known, I repeated again. It's all my fault. I ought to have seen, I ought to have known. No, don't worry. You'll be able to explain the whole thing to him quietly. Everything will be quite all right. The first little people were arriving just as I came upstairs to you. They are having drinks. Everything's all right. I've told Frank and Giles to make up a story about your dress not fitting, and you were very disappointed. I did not say anything. I went on sitting on the bed with my hands in my lap. "What can you wear instead?" said Beatrice, going to my wardrobe and flinging open the doors. "Here, what's this blue? It looks charming. Put this on. Nobody will mind. Quick, I'll help you." "No," I said. "No. I'm not coming down." Beatrice stared at me in great distress, my blue frock over her arm. "Oh, but my dear, you must," she said in dismay. "You can't possibly not appear." "No, Beatrice, I'm not coming down. I can't face them. Not after what happened." "But nobody will know about the dress," she said. "Frank and Giles will never breathe a word. We've got the story all arranged. The shop sent the wrong dress, and it did not fit, so you are wearing an ordinary evening dress instead. Everyone will think it's perfectly natural. It won't make any difference to the evening." "You don't understand," I said. "I don't care about the dress. It's not that at all. It's what has happened, what I did. I can't come down now, Beatrice. I can't." "Oh, but my dear, Giles and Frank understand perfectly. They are full of sympathy. And Maxim too. It was just the first shock." "I'll try and get him alone in a minute. I'll explain the whole thing." "No," I said. "No!" She put my blue frock down beside me on the bed. "Everyone will be arriving," she said, very worried, very upset. "It will look so extraordinary if you don't come down. I can't say you suddenly got a headache." "Why not?" I said wearily. "What does it matter? Make anything up. Nobody will mind. They don't. Any of them know me." "Come now, my dear," she said, patting my hand. "Try and make the effort. Put on this charming blue. Think of Maxim. You must come down for his sake." "I'm thinking about Maxim all the time," I said. "Well then, surely." "No," I said, tearing up my nails, rocking backwards and forwards on the bed. I can't. "I don't mind, plus it might be pretty obvious, but helping you out as a Minecraft server Discord makes me happy." "Oh, because I get to make someone else happy too. Oh, that's really sweet, thank you." I get what you mean though, like, I like doing things for friends and stuff. Like, there's been times where, so I do writing and stuff, and I wrote my original song, and I've written stuff for friends, just because I wanted to, and yeah, it's nice to get their reaction. Yeah, so I understand what you mean. Now where was I? There we go. Somebody else knocked on the door. Oh dear, who on earth is that?" she said, walking to the door. "What is it?" She opened the door. Giles was standing just outside. "Everyone has turned up. Maxim sent me up to find out what's happening," he said. "She says she won't come down," said Beatrice. "What on earth are we going to say?" I caught sight of Giles peering up at me through the open door. "Oh Lord, what a frightful mix-up," he whispered. He turned away embarrassed when he noticed that I had seen him. "What shall I say to Maxim?" he asked Beatrice. "It's 8:05 now." "Say she's feeling rather faint. We will try to come down later. Tell them not to wait dinner. I'll be down directly. I'll make it all right." "Yes, right you are." He half glanced in my direction again, sympathetic but rather curious, wondering why I sat there on the bed. Then his voice was low, as it might be after an absence where people are waiting on the doctor. "Is there anything I can do?" he said. "No," said Beatrice. "Go down now. I'll follow in a minute." He obeyed her, shuffling away in his Arabian clothes. This is the sort of moment, I thought, that I shall laugh at years afterwards, as I shall say, "Do you remember how Giles was dressed as an Arab and Beatrice had a veil over her face and jangling bangles on her wrist?" And time will mellow it, making it a moment for laughter. But now it was not funny. Now I did not laugh. It was not the future. It was the present. It was too vivid and too real. I sat on the bed, plucking at the eiderdown, pulling little feather out of the slit in one corner. "Would you like some brandy?" said Beatrice, making a last effort. "I know it's only Dutch courage, but it sometimes works wonders." "No," I said. "No, I don't want anything. I shall have to go down. Giles says they are waiting dinner. Are you sure it's all right for me to leave you?" "Yes, and thank you, Beatrice." "Oh, my dear, don't thank me. I wish I could do something." She stooped swiftly to my looking-glass and dabbed her face with powder. "God, what a sight I look," she said. "This damned veil is crooked, I know. However, it can't be helped." She rustled out of the room, closing the door behind her. I felt I had forfeited her sympathy by my refusal to go down. I had shown the white feather. She had not understood. She belonged to another breed of men and women, another race as I. Oh, another race than I. They had guts, the women of her race. They were not like me. If I had been Beatrice who had done this thing instead of me, she would have put on her other dress and gone down again to welcome her guests. She would have stood by Giles' side and shaken hands with people, a smile on her face. I could not do that. I had not the pride. I had not the guts. I was badly bred. I kept seeing Maxim's eyes blazing in his white face, and behind him Giles and Beatrice and Frank, standing like dummies, staring at me. I got up from my bed and went about and looked out of the window. The gardeners were going round to the lights in the rose garden, testing them to see if they all worked. The sky was pale, with a few salmon clouds of evening streaks to the west. When it was dusk, the lamps would be lit. There were tables and chairs in the rose garden for the couples who wanted to sit out. I could smell the roses from my garden. Oh, I could smell the roses from my window. The men were talking to one another and laughing. "There's one here gone," I heard a voice call out. "Can you get another small bulb? One of the blue ones, Bill?" He fixed the light into position. He whistled a popular tune of the moment with easy confidence, and I thought how tonight, perhaps, the band would play the same tune in the minstrel's gallery above the hall. "That's got it," said the man, switching the light on and off. "They're all right here. No other's gone. We'd better have a look at those on the terrace." They went off round the corner of the house, still whistling the song. I wished I could be the man. Later in the evening he would stand with his friends in the drive and watch the cars drive up to the house, his hands in his pockets, his cap on the back of his head. He would stand in the crowd with other people from the estate, and then drink cider at the long table arranged for them in one corner of the terrace. "Like the old days, isn't it?" he would say. But his friend would shake his head, puffing out his pipe. "This new one's not like our Mrs. De Winter. She's different altogether." And the woman next to them in the crowd would agree, other people too, all saying, "That's right," and nodding their heads. "Where is she tonight? She's not been on the terrace once." "Can't say I'm sure. I've not seen her." "Mrs. De Winter used to be here, there, and everywhere." "Aye, that's right." And the woman would turn to her neighbours, nodding hysterically. They say she's not appearing tonight at all." "Go on." "That's right. One of the servants from the house told me. Mrs. De Winter hasn't come down from her room all evening." "What's wrong with the maid? Is she bad?" "No, sulky, I reckon. They say her dress didn't please her." A squeal of laughter and a murmur from the little crowd. "Did you ever hear such a thing? It's a shame for Mrs. De Winter." I wouldn't stand for it, not from a chit like her. Maybe it's not true at all. "It's true, all right. They're full of it up at the house." One to the other, this group to the next. A smile, a wink, a shrug of the shoulders. One group and then another group, and then spreading to the guests who walked on the terrace and strolled across the lawns, the couple who in 3 hours' time were sitting in those chairs beneath me in the rose garden. "Do you suppose it's true what I've heard?" "What do you mean?" Why, that there's nothing wrong with her at all. They've had a colossal row and she won't appear." "I say!" And then the eyebrows, a lift of the eyebrows, a low whistle. "I know. Well, it does look rather odd, don't you think? What I mean is, people don't suddenly, for no reason, have violent headaches. I call the whole thing jolly fishy." I thought he looked a bit grim. So did I. "Of course, I have heard before the marriage is not a wild success." "Oh, really?" Several people have said so. They say he's beginning to realise he's made a big mistake. She's nothing to look at, you know." "Oh, I've heard there's nothing much to her." "Who was she?" "Oh, no one at all. Some pick-up in the south of France. A nursery girl or something." "Good Lord!" "I know. And when you think of Rebecca—" I went on staring at the empty chairs. The salmon sky had turned to grey. Above my head was the evening star. In the woods beyond the rose garden, the birds were making their last little rustling noises before nightfall. A lone gull flew across the sky. I went away from the window, back to the bed again. I picked up the white dress I had left on the floor and put it back in the box with the tissue paper. I put the wig I put the wig back in its box too. Then I looked in one of my cupboards for the little portable iron I used to have in Monte Carlo for Mrs. Van Hopper's dresses. It was lying at the back of a shelf with some woolen jumpers I had not worn for a long time. The iron was one of those universal kinds that go on any voltage and fitted to any plug on the wall. I began to iron the blue dress that Beatrice had taken from the wardrobe. slowly, methodically, as I used to iron Mrs. Van Hopper's dresses in Monte Carlo. When I had finished, I laid the dress ready on the bed. Then I cleaned the makeup off my face I had put on for the fancy dress. I combed my hair and washed my hands. I put on the blue dress and the shoes that went with it. I might have been my old self again, going down to the lounge of the hotel, Mrs. Van Hopper. I opened the door to my room and went along the corridor. Everything was still and silent. There might not have been a party at all. I tiptoed to the edge of the passage and turned the corner. The door to the west wing was closed. There was no sound or anything at all. When I came to the archway by the gallery and the staircase, I heard the murmur and hum of conversation coming from the dining room. They were still having dinner. The great hall was deserted. There was nobody in the gallery either. The band must be having their dinner too. I did not know what arrangements had been made for them. Frank had done it. Frank or Mrs. Danvers. From where I stood, I could see the picture of Caroline de Winter facing me in the gallery. I could see the curls framing her face. I could see the smile on her lips. I remembered the bishop's wife who had said to me that day. I called. I shall never forget her, dressed in all white with that cloud of dark hair. I ought to have remembered that. I ought to have known. How queer the instruments looked in the gallery, little stands for the music, the big drum. One of the men had left his handkerchief on the chair. I knelt over the rail and looked down at the hall below. Soon they would be filled with people, like the bishop's wife had said, and Maxim would stand in the bottom of the stairs, shaking hands with them as they came into the hall. The sound of their voices would echo to the ceiling, and then the band would play from the gallery where I was leaning now, the man with the violin smiling, swaying to the music. It would not be quiet like this any more. A board creaked in the gallery. I swung around, looking at the gallery behind me. There was nobody there. The gallery was empty, just as it had been before. A current of air blew in my face, though. Somebody must have left a window open in one of the passages. The hum of voices continued in the dining room. I wondered why the board creaked when I had not moved at all. The warmth of the night, perhaps, a swelling somewhere in the yard wood. The draught still blew in my face, though. A piece of music on one of the stands fluttered to the floor. I looked towards the archway above the stairs. The draught was coming from there. I went beneath the arch again, and when I came out to the long corridor, I saw that the door to the west wing had been blown open and swung back against the wall. It was dark in the west passage. None of the lights had been turned on. I could feel the wind blowing on my face from an open window. I fumbled for a switch on the wall and I could not find one. I could see the window in an angle of the passage, the curtain blowing softly, backwards and forwards. The grey evening light cast queer shadows on the floor. The sound of the sea came to me through the open window, the soft hissing sound of the ebb tide leaving the shingle. I did not go and shut the window. I stood there, shivering a moment in my thin dress, listening to the sea as it sighed and left the shore. Then I turned quickly and shut the door of the west wing behind me, and came out again through the archway by the stairs. The murmur of voices had swollen now, and was louder than before. The door of the dining room was open. They were coming out of dinner. I could see Robert standing by the open door, and there was a scraping of chairs, a babble of conversation, and laughter. I walked slowly down the stairs to meet them. When I look back at my first party at Manderley, my first and my last, I can remember little isolated things standing alone out of the vast blank canvas of the evening. The background was hazy, a sea of dim faces, none of whom I knew, and there was the slow drone of the band harping out a waltz that never finished, that went on and on. The same couples swung by in rotation, the same fixed smiles, and to me, standing with Maxim at the bottom of the stairs to welcome the latecomers, these dancing couples seemed like marionettes twisting and turning on a piece of string, held by some invisible hand. There was a woman. I never knew her name, never saw her again, but she wore a salmon-coloured gown, hooped, in crinoline form, a vague gesture to some past century, for whether 17th, 18th, or 19th, I could not tell. And every time she passed me, it coincided with the sweeping bar of the waltz to which she dipped and swayed, smiling as she did so in my direction. It happened again and again, until it became automatic, a matter of routine, like those promenades on board ship, where we meet the same people, bent on exercise like ourselves, and know with deadly certainty that we will pass by them on the bridge. My back hurts. I can see her now, the prominent teeth, the gay spot of rouge placed high upon her cheekbones, and her smile, vacant, happy, enjoying her evening. Later, I saw her by the supper table, her keen eyes searching the food as she heaped a plate high with salmon and lobster mayonnaise, and went off into the corner. There was Lady Crowman too, monstrous in purple, disguised as I know, not what romantic figure of the past. It might have been Marie Antoinette or Nell Gwyn, for all I knew, or a strange erotic combination of the two, and she kept exclaiming in excited high-pitched tones, a little higher than usual because of the champagne she had consumed, "You will have me to thank for this, not the deep winters at all." I remember Robert dropping a tray of ices, and the expressions of Berth's face when he saw Robert was the culprit, and not one of the minions hired for the occasion. I wanted to go to Robert and stand beside him and say, "I know how you feel. I understand. I've done worse than you tonight." I can feel now the stiff-set smile on my face that did not match the misery in my eyes. I can see Beatrice, dear, friendly, tactless Beatrice, watching me from her partner's arms, nodding encouragement, with angles jangling on her wrists, the veil slipping continually from her overheated forehead, and I can picture myself once more whirled round the room in a desperate dance with Giles, who with dog-like sympathy and a kind heart would take no refusal, but must steer me through the stamping crowd as he would one of his own horses at meat. "That's a jolly pretty dress you're wearing," I can hear him say. "It makes all these people look damn silly." And I blessed him for his pathetic, simple gesture of understanding and sincerity, thinking, dear Giles, that I was disappointed in my dress, that I was worrying about my appearance, that I cared. It was Frank who brought me a plate of chicken and ham I could eat, but I could not eat, and Frank, who stood by my elbow with a glass of champagne, I would not drink. "I wish you would," he said quietly. "I think you need it." And I took 3 sips of it to please him. The black patch over his eye gave him a pale, odd appearance. It made him look older, different. There seemed to be lines on his face I had not seen before. He moved amongst the guests like another host, seeing to their comfort that they were supplied with drink and food and cigarettes, and he danced too, in solemn, painstaking fashion, walking his partners round the room with a set face. He did not wear his pirate costume with abandon, and there was something rather tragic about the side whiskers he had fluffed under the scarlet handkerchief on his head. I thought of him standing before the looking-glass in his bare bachelor bedroom, curling them round his finger. Poor Frank. Dear Frank. I never asked. I never knew how much he hated the last fancy dress ball given at Manderley. The band played on, and the swaying couples twisted like bobbing marionettes, to and fro, across the great hall and back again, and it was not I who watched them at all, not someone with feelings, made of flesh and blood, but a dummy stick of a person in my stead, a prop who wore a smile screwed to its face. The figure who stood beside it was wooden too. His face was a mask, his smile was not his own. The eyes were not the eyes of a man I loved, the man I knew. They looked through me and beyond me, cold, expressionless, to some place of pain and torture I could not enter, to some private inward hell I could not share. He never spoke to me, he never touched me. We stood beside one another, the host and the hostess, and we were not together. I watched him curtsy to his guests. He flung a word to one, a jest to another, a smile to a third, a call over his shoulder to a fourth, and no one but myself could know that every utterance he made, every movement, was automatic and the work of a machine. We were like 2 performers in a play, but we were divided. We were not acting with one another. We had to endure it alone. We had to put up this show, this miserable sham performance, for the sake of all these people. I did not know, and I did not want to see again. "I hear your wife's frock never turned up in time," said someone with a mottled face and sailor's pigtail, and they laughed and dug Maxim in the ribs. "Damn shame, what? I should sue the shop for fraud. Same thing happened to my wife's cousin once. Yes, it was unfortunate, said Maxim. I tell you what, said the tailor, turning to me. You ought to say you are a forget-me-not. They're blue, aren't they? Jolly little flowers, forget-me-nots. That's right, isn't it, you Winter? Tell your wife she must call herself a forget-me-not. He swept away, roaring with laughter, his partner in his arms. Pretty good idea, what? A forget-me-not? Then, Frank again, hovering just behind me, another glass in his hand, lemonade this time. No, Frank, I'm not thirsty. Why don't you dance, or come and sit down a moment? There's a corner in the terrace. No, I'm better standing. I don't want to sit down. Can't I get you anything? A sandwich? A peach? No, I don't want anything. There was the salmon lady again. She forgot to smile at me this time. She was flushed after her supper. She kept looking up into her partner's face. He was very tall, very thin. He had a chin like a fiddle. The Destiny Waltz, the Blue Danube, the Merry Widow. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, round and round. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, round and round. The salmon lady, a green lady, Beatrice again, her veil pushed back off her forehead, Giles, his face streaming with perspiration, and that sailor once more, with another partner. They stopped beside me. I did not know her. She was dressed as a Tudor woman, any Tudor woman. She wore a ruffle round her throat and a black velvet dress. When are you coming to see us? She said, as though we were old friends, and I answered, soon, of course. We were talking about it the other day. I wondered why I found it so easy to lie, suddenly. No effort at all. Such a delightful party. I do congratulate you, she said. Thank you very much, I said. It's fun, isn't it? I hear they sent you the wrong dress. Yes, absurd, wasn't it? These shops are all the same, no depending on them, but you look delightfully fresh in that pale blue, much more comfortable than this hot velvet. Don't forget you must both come and dine at the palace soon. We should love to. What does she mean? Where? What palace? Were we entertaining royalty? She swept on to the blue Danube in the arms of a sailor, her velvet frock brushing the ground like a carpet sweeper, and it was not until long afterwards, in the middle of some night, when I could not sleep, that I remembered the Tudor woman was the bishop's wife who liked walking in the Pennines. What was the time? I did not know. The evening dragged on, hour after hour, the same faces and the same tunes. Now and again the bridge people crept out of the library like hermits to watch the dancers, and then returned again. Beatrice, her draperies trailing behind her, whispered in my ear, Why don't you sit down? You look like death. I'm all right. Giles, the makeup running on his face, poor fellow, and stifling in his Arab blanket, came up to me and said, Come and watch the fireworks on the terrace. I remember standing on the terrace and staring up at the sky as the foolish rockets burst and fell. There was little Clarice in the corner, with some boy on the estate. She was smiling happily, squealing with delight as a squib spluttered at her feet. She had forgotten her tears. Hello, this would be a Dugan. Giles, his large face upturned, his mouth open. Here she comes. Bravo. Jolly. Fine show. The slow hiss of the rocket as it sped into the air, the burst of the explosion, the stream of little emerald stars, a murmur of approval from the crowd, cries of delight, and a clapping of hands. The salmon lady, well to the front, her face eager with expectation, a remark for every star that fell. Oh, what a beauty! Look at that one now, I say, how pretty! Oh, that one didn't burst. Take care, it's coming our way. What are those men doing over there? Even the hermits left their lair and came to join the dancers on the terrace. The lawns were black with people. The bursting stars shone on their upturned faces. Again and again the rockets sped into the air, like arrows, and the sky became crimson and gold. Manderley stood out like an enchanted house, every window aflame, the grey walls coloured by the falling stars, a house bewitched, carved out of the dark woods, and when the last rocket burst and the cheering died away, the nights that had been fine before seemed dull and heavy in contrast. The sky became a pall. The little groups on the lawn and in the drive broke up and scattered. The guests crowded the long windows, in the terrace, back to the drawing room again. It was anticlimax. The aftermath had come. We stood about with blank faces. Someone gave me a glass of champagne. I heard the sound of cars starting up in the drive. They're beginning to go, I thought. Thank God they're beginning to go. The salmon lady was having some more supper. It would take time yet to clear the hall. I saw Frank make a signal to the band. I stood in the doorway between the drawing room and the hall, beside a man I did not know. "What a wonderful party it's been," he said. "Yes," I said. "I've enjoyed every minute of it," he said. "I'm so glad," I said. "Molly was wild with fury at missing it," he said. "Was she?" I said. The band began to play Auld Lang Syne. The man seized my hand and started swinging it up and down. "Here," he said. "Come on, some of you." Somebody else swung my other hand, and some people joined us. We stood in a great circle, singing at the top of our voices. The man who had enjoyed his evening and said Molly would be wild at missing it was dressed as a Chinese mandarin. Okay. And his false nails got caught up in the sleeve as we swung our hands up and down. He roared with laughter. We all laughed. "Should old acquaintances be forgotten?" we sang. We sang. "Should old acquaintances be forgotten?" The hilarious gaiety changed swiftly at the closing bars, and the drummer rattled his sticks at the inevitable prelude to God Save the King. The smiles left our faces, as though wiped clean by a sponge. The mandarin sprang to attention, his hands stiff by his sides. I remember wonderfully, vaguely, if he was in the army. How queer he looked, with his long poker face and his drooping mandarin moustache. I caught the salmon lady's eye. God Save the King had taken her unawares. She was still holding a plate heaped with chicken, in aspic. She held it stiffly out in front of her like a church collection. All animation had gone from her face, as the last note of God Save the King died away. She relaxed again and attacked her chicken in a sort of frenzy, chattering over her shoulder to her partner. Somebody came and wrung me by my hand. "Don't forget you're dining with us on the 14th of the next month." "Oh, are we?" I stared blankly. "Yes, we've got your sister-in-law to promise to." Oh, what fun. 8:30 and a black tie, so looking forward to seeing you. Yes, rather. People began to form up in queues to say goodbye. Maxim was up the other side of the room. I put on my smile again, which I had worn thin after Auld Lang Syne. "The best evening I've spent in a long time. I'm so glad. Many thanks for a grand party. Many thanks for a grand party. I'm so glad. Here we are, you see, staying to the bitter end. Yes, I'm so glad." Was there no other sentence in the English language? I bowed and smiled like a dummy, my eyes searching for Maxim. Above their heads he was caught up in a knot of people by the library. Beatrice too was surrounded, and Giles had led a team of stragglers to the buffet table in the drawing room. Frank was out on the drive, seeing that people got their cars. I was hemmed in by strangers. "Goodbye, and thanks tremendously. I'm so glad." The great hall began to empty. Already it wore that drab, deserted air of a vanished evening and the dawn of a tired day. There was a grey light. On the terrace, I could see the shapes of the blown firework, stands taking form on the lawns. "Goodbye. A wonderful party. I'm so glad." Maxim had gone out to join Frank in the drive. Beatrice came up to me, pulling off her jangling bracelets. "I can't stand these things for a moment longer. Heavens, I'm a deadbeat. I don't believe I've missed a dance. Anyway, it was a tremendous success." "Ooh, Kyoka, guess what?" "What?" "Tell me." "My dear, hadn't you better go to bed? You look worn out. You've been standing nearly all the evening. Where are the men?" "Out on the drive. I shall have some coffee and eggs and bacon. What about you?" "No, Beatrice, I don't think I will. You looked very charming in your blue. Everybody said so, and nobody had an inkling about the other things, so you mustn't worry. The server's active. Wow!" "Yay! Oh, that's great. Wow. You have to send me the IP. I'll try and go on it soon. Yay!" "No. If I were you, I should have a good long lie tomorrow morning. Don't attempt to get up. Have your breakfast in bed." "Yes, perhaps. I'll tell Maxim we've gone up, shall I?" "Please, Beatrice." "All right, my dear. Sleep well." She kissed me swiftly, patting my shoulder at the same time, and then went off to find Giles in the supper room. I walked slowly up the stairs, one step at a time. The band had turned the lights off in the gallery and had gone down to have their eggs and bacon too. Pieces of music lay about on the floor. One chair had been upturned. There was an ashtray full of stubs of their cigarettes. The aftermath of the party. I went along the corridor to my room. It was getting lighter every moment, and the birds had started singing. I did not have to turn on the light to undress. A little chill wind blew in from an open window. It was rather cold. Many people must have used the rose garden during the evening, for all the chairs were moved and dragged from their places. There was a tray of empty glasses on one of the tables. Somebody had left a bag behind on a chair. I pulled the curtain to darken the room, but the grey morning light found its way through the gaps at the side. I got into bed, my legs very weary. A niggling pain in the small of my back. I lay back and closed my eyes, thankful for the cool white comfort of clean sheets. I wished my mind would rest like my body, relax, and pass to sleep. Not hum round in the way it did, jigging to music, whirling in a sea of faces. I pressed my hands over my eyes, but they would not go. I wondered how long Maxim would be. The bed beside me looked stark and cold. Soon there would be no shadows in the room at all. The walls and the ceiling and the floor would be white with the morning. The birds would sing their songs, louder, gayer, less subdued. The sun would make a yellow pattern on the curtain. My little bedside clock ticked out the minutes, one by one. The hand moved round the dial. I lay on my side, watching it. It came to the hour and passed again. It started afresh on its journey. But Maxim did not come. So that's the end of chapter 17. Oh, I was going to get on the control panel looking around on there to get used to it. Now I'm going to give you the info. Yay! Let's go! Ooh, just joining. What's this about? The Minecraft server. Hi Kimmy, welcome. Basically, you know how, I think it was on the Final Fantasy stream, Echo said that, how they were going to do a partnership with, a company that made Minecraft servers. We might be getting one, yay! But yeah, it's going to be a community one, so we'll probably, put the server IP when it's ready in my Discord server, and then we can all play together, which I think sounds really fun. Yay! But yeah, so that's the end of the stream today. This was quite a hefty read, a lot of emotions, but hopefully it will all be resolved soon. Yeah, I feel really bad for the main character, because I mean she did it because she thought it would be fun, but yeah, I didn't get a good reaction. Ooh, let me in as soon as it's ready. Me too. Oh my gosh, yes. We could all make a little village together. That'd be really cute. It's also a premium server. Ooh, wait, what does that mean? What makes it premium? I'm curious. Oof. I don't know why, but whenever I do these reading streams, I don't know if it's because I'm looking down at the book, but my back hurts. Ow, 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 ow. Yeah, we've got not too much of the book left. I say that, we've still got quite a bit. How many pages are there? It's 428 pages this edition, and I'm on page 259. So we've got about 120? No. Like, it's a little bit less than 200 pages left, which is just over the halfway point. Yay! Oh, it should have more storage. Oh, I see. Cool. Well, that sounds exciting. Maybe I'll do a stream on it as well, and we can all just like chill together. That'd be fun. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna go off now. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this ASMR. We read through a very dramatic party. But yeah, so I'm going to be posting my schedule tomorrow for next week, and I'll see you guys then. Bye. Have a good rest of your week. Have a good weekend, guys. See you next week. See you next week. Da, 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 da.